Moving straight along, I'd like to invite to the podium Sam. Sam, you've got 1 minute.
Thank you very much for that. Thanks to HSBC for sponsoring this and the British Library for hosting such a great event. It's my first time here, and it'll definitely not be the last. I know there are a number of people who have questions later on, so I'd like to just try to answer 4 questions and do them as quickly as I can about my business career. And the first thing is, I asked myself before I went into the business, am I the right person? Am I the right sort of person who can go into business and succeed? And the second question I asked myself is, what sort of business can you actually get off the ground quickly and make lots of money out of? And then I asked myself, is there a formula to get it right? And fourthly, what are the biggest challenges you're going to face? And the reason why I pose these questions to myself is I am the most unlikely business person, I think, in the world. I studied philosophy at university, which is not very practical, as many of you would know. I then went into investment banking, somehow not even knowing the difference between a share and a bond. And, they asked me these questions, and I just sort of gave my answers, and they said, well, Goldman Sachs said, well, we can train you. And that's how I ended up in finance. And after 5 years, I realized I actually wasn't cut out to be an investment banker, although I could have probably told them that in my first interview when I didn't know the difference between a share and a bond. I thought, okay, I want to do something else. And I just attacked it in a very methodical way. What do I think works? And firstly, am I the right person? And you read about different businessmen. Some people left school at 16 and, never looked back. Some people left school at 16 and lost everything and had to find a job. And some people have 20 years experience in their sector and then go on to build a business in that sector. What's the right approach to take? And what I realized was there actually isn't a right approach. If you take a group of entrepreneurs and try to study their backgrounds, there really isn't a pattern. But I think there is a right attitude. And I think the right attitude is really around just being completely hard-headed and sometimes stupidly confident in yourself and your abilities. If you believe that it can be done, you've got to really work hard to make it possible. But also, you shouldn't be easily dissuaded by the doubters. When you start in a business, there'll be a lot of people who will doubt that it's possible, and sometimes a lot of them will be right. And you shouldn't necessarily ignore what they say, but take it on board and push ahead, as opposed to be stopped by that. And that's how I ended up in what, for me, are very, very uncharacteristic businesses. My first business was training truck drivers and putting them into work. Now, I didn't even have a driving license myself. And, going from, Goldman Sachs to a putter cabin in the Midlands, and I remember walking into some of these putter cabins saying, you know what, I've got drivers for you, and you get these sort of men weighing 25 stone, in their singlets, looking at me and thinking, what the hell are you doing here? And the only way we could build a business that employed 70 people and turned over 10 million in that sector was I threw myself completely into it. I knew nothing about recruitment. I signed up with REC and I went on some recruitment classes myself. I knew nothing about transport, stopped reading the FT. I started reading Motor Transport every week. And it is a very interesting publication. I then started every day. That's all I did. I completely immersed myself in that. So is there a typical business that you can get into? The way I thought about it was going into a business that doesn't require huge amounts of capital is a good way to start. And going into a business that was training people and putting them into work was quite a good way to do it. Now, my second business, which is launching in 5 weeks' time, is an internet business. And again, I'm not really an internet person. I'm not an engineer. I don't have programming running through my veins. But again, what I've done is got the right people on board and worked very closely with them. But this internet business is coming out of a traditional recruitment business, which I bought with a group of investors a year ago. Now, so there are 3 business situations, truck driving, a normal recruitment business, and now an internet business, completely different. And I don't think there is any such thing as a typical business. I think what makes you successful is being prepared to go where no one else will go. And if you see the opportunity there, no one else will go there, feel free to go along. Is there a formula? I think there is. And a magic formula, I think, is all around very carefully planning. I knew that I didn't have the experience when I started. So the first thing I sought to do was to get people with experience on board. I tried to get a chairman on board. I got a business partner on board who had started a business before. And with that team, we then went and raised finance. So, and we then put together a business plan and raised finance from people who could invest. And the formula was very much every negative that Mr. HSBC would have when you go to see them for money, try to correct it before you go and see them. That's how I did it. And when I went to raise investment, that worked a dream. And the same investors have backed all my businesses so far. But finally, what is the biggest challenge? Because I'm conscious of the time. And I think the biggest challenge is around support. It's the support you need to actually keep the thing going. I think things like finding office space, getting the right computers, sorting out your marketing plan, with the right advice, working hard, networking, you'll resolve it. But getting the support you need to keep it going, because there are times when it's great. I've had some great times in business, and there are times when I've just felt like hanging myself. Why did that go wrong? I just can't understand it. And my poor wife has to deal with both the highs and the lows all the time. And I think that support, whether it's friends and family, but also the sort of support that the British Library gives in terms of information and advice. And I think that's the biggest challenge you have as a business, just getting the right information at the right time to avoid making mistakes. You make mistakes, we all make mistakes. It's about whether you can get advice to avoid them, and if you do make them, whether you have the hide of a rhinoceros to recover and keep going. And that's what I think the secret formula is about. Thank you.